So welcome everyone to the WASM filters meeting. So this is a meeting that is particularly focused on initiatives at layer 5 which focus on WebAssembly filters. And we have a couple of topics that are from last week. So a couple of action items from last week, and people have been working on it over the week. And to start us off, Sayantan, would you like to give us an update on the GitHub action for Meshery patterns?
Yeah, sure, Navendu. Let me share my screen. So actually, I was working on this PR, I think, but this PR has a lot of changes which I have done in my own repository. So basically, that PR has got a lot of mistakes over there, some mistakes. So I have already corrected those in my local changes. So right now, this I have already run a workflow based on this my current action, like which I have in my in my local fork. So I have run a current action. So it's basically working, like the setup job is doing its work. Now the next one is the message CTL pattern action. So first it is checking for the KETs, and it is connecting my AEDs, and it's also deploying the Kubernetes. So I'm telling, so this is the minikube. I'm been using Ubuntu 2004 in my GitHub workflow. So yeah, so basically over here the minikube is being connected, and then I am also installing the Meshery. So my Meshery is also getting installed with the Meshery CTL's current version. So it's pulling up the layers, and after this, I think it's also getting a visual in localhost 9081. But the problem I am facing is that I am currently trying to I'm currently trying to do this action Meshery CTL pattern apply, and I am using this pattern file which is in my which is in this service mesh pattern repository. So if you see, this is the current file which I am trying to deploy in my Meshery. But the problem that is coming, I'm still not able to figure out this RPC error. Like it says no matches for kind envoy filter and versioning this thing. So basically right now I am checking out this error. I think after this error is solved, I can successfully deploy this pattern to my Meshery.
So Sanjay, did you install Istio in the workflow?
No, I didn't install any service meshes at I didn't install any particular service mesh.
Yeah, actually, that error is coming because you did not initiate the installation of mesh of Istio. So these custom resources are probably not registered. So that's what it is complaining, I think.
But actually I was thinking about if like I am going to install Istio, then I need to install all the service meshes in that way, like because the pattern file can be anything from either Istio or OSM.
No, so as you can see, the type is onward filter Istio. So, and that is available only in the Istio adapter. So for this particular thing, only actually you don't have to do it manually. You can do it in the pattern file itself. You can say in the pattern file that these things depend on, so your workflow can stay generic while pattern file would get specific that, okay, this thing is going to rely on Istio. So what you can ask your pattern file in your pattern, you can specify that, okay, install Istio and then proceed ahead with all of the other things. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I got it. Like to mention that in pattern file itself, right? Istio installation.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically now into that's the update from my side.
A quick question, like what all configurations are we exposing to the user right now in the action?
So basically right now I am just allowing this thing, like only the URL thing, because I haven't figured out about like giving a file itself, but I have figured, like I have almost done this giving through a URL. So is that was your question?
Yep. So yeah, so ideally like URL, so we should be able to deploy with URL, a pattern name or a pattern file. So that should be configurable in the action, I guess. And
Can you
do
repeat that? Like one will be URL and one will the file.
yeah, URL, and if the user already has a, like if they are logged into their particular provider and then they have a filter or a pattern that is already stored in the provider, then we should be just able to specify the name. Like I think mesh rectl supports that.
Yeah, mesh rectl supports that.
Okay. And uh, like do we also I'm not sure about this, but like maybe users should also be able to configure what mesh they want to deploy, like the basic they should have the control of their mesh rectl config file.
Yeah, like that can be done, like what all meshes they want to deploy. Yeah, I will configure that.
All right, anyone else have any other questions or suggestions? Rudraksha, like yeah, Lee, go ahead.
Just going to say that this is, as you guys look at configuring the filters, it's just good reflection for Abi on the pattern configurator, because that'll be part and parcel to people configuring filters. Is the same thing with the pattern configurator. They'll need to do it through patterns as well, which is the mechanism that Shaitan is using.
Okay.
Rudraksha, like I'm not sure about what you mentioned. Like there is a separate branch which has both the functionalities.
Yeah, so earlier when I was writing E2E tests for Meshri, I just updated the action a bit to have more changes so that you can also use in cluster and out of cluster. So the master branch doesn't have these changes right now. The other branch has them. It's because there were some things that I was not sure if someone would really need when using the action, like having control over what version. I mean, if they want to deploy stable or edge and things like that. So yeah, I'll probably remove them and then update master so that the action supports both in cluster and out of cluster deployments.
Yep, makes sense. And so Sayantan, like as Rudraksha updates this branch and maybe merges it with the master branch, maybe we can propagate those configurations across other actions as well, so that like we remain consistent and like users will have more configurability of their action.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you, Sayantan. Thanks for the update. So the next up is Utkarsh. Utkarsh, like were you able to check in with the Cypress testing?
Yeah, actually, I did. I initially forgot to reach out, but I then did reach out to him. I haven't yet got a response regarding the updates, any if there are any. So I'm not sure. Yeah, basically right now I'm not sure. I don't have updates from Mario at the moment.
So I don't think Vishal is on the call. Like Vishal was also going to look into the Cypress testing. Anyone has comments on this?
Yeah, I don't think that we should wait for either of those two gentlemen. So Vishal has been here for little over a year, and I think he made one attempt to contribute one time with some actual code in CI at one point. And he's volunteered to help, I don't know, 15, 20 times. And so he's not going to do anything. And I wish he were on the call so that I could give him that feedback. Like he needs to do what he says he's going to do. From Mario, yeah, we shouldn't give up hope. He'd been, he's knowledgeable in this area. He'd been gung ho in joining the community. He joined a lot of the calls, and his engagement had abruptly stopped. So I wonder if he's okay, or I wonder if something hasn't changed for him. So we should try again. I'll take the baton. I'll go reach out to him and see if what he's up to. Outside of that, though, if there's anyone else on the call that would like to try their hand at some functional testing using Cypress, this is a good opportunity.
Yeah, I would like to, try my hands on.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Javi. There's a couple of, we'd given a presentation about, so Rodolfo Martinez Vegas is a maintainer in the community. He's focused on CI. So he has brought Cypress as a tool. So he's a good individual to engage with. And really I think there's about only one thing that you need to bear in mind as you were to write a functional test in Cypress. And that is just that you want to try to make it as least as anti-fragile. Because just like unit tests, these types of tests have a way of becoming a sustaining burden over time. So if you imagine, if any of you are familiar with front-end based testing, some of the tools in the past will record the position of where your mouse is on the screen, which that means when you move something, when you redesign the site, you've got to go update the test because that mouse position is no longer relevant. Or others have been, there've been various approaches. The approach that Cypress is using, I think, is more broadly adopted now, which is nice. It uses just a unique key to identify, to ID a given element on the DOM, and then to go interact with that to invoke whatever, if it's an on click or an on hover or whatever it is that's appropriate. So just try to make them so that they're not fragile is the thing. There's prior art though in there, Avi, that you'll be able to use as a base for creating another test.
Anyone else like to try their hands at this? Or have any comments on how we should be approaching
Yeah,
this?
another one would be Avi, if you do get in there and have success with a test, or even if you just become really familiar with the existing tests, this is a potential topic to present at a community meeting to just educate people on what Cypress is, why we're using it, how it's helpful, just what your insights, things that you've learned. And that'll help make more people feel comfortable and help also provide context as to why it's so important, why it's so much needed.
Okay.
Thank you, Utkarsh. Thanks, Lee and Abhishek. So moving on to the next topic, Rudraksha, could you give us an update on the seeding of filters from the last discussion? And I think you have some areas where you need help. So Could you also mention that?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really sorry. I was supposed to send some updates on 29th, and then I didn't send them neither over the weekend because mainly I was spinning in circles and I was lost. Anyways, some things just stuck. I'll share my screen so as to give a better update. So these were the things that I was supposed to be delivering. I have updated this spec and I made the sequence diagram slide. Two of these things still remain. This is the updated spec. Yes, I just did changes few seconds ago. Mainly I was confused about how would we exactly be, because the challenges that we're facing here is not overwriting the changes that users make and still making sure that they get all new updates. And yeah, so I was stuck with this, I don't know, for a day, but I just updated it right now, and I don't have that table designed yet in mystery object model yet. Here is how it would look, and yeah, I don't think that I've given others enough time to review it, so I don't ask for comments right now. Also, a sequence flow diagram looks like this. It's pretty artless, but basically, when we push a new release, the Docker image gets the bundled content, and when it is deployed, I mean, I think when Watchtower redeploys a container, it starts everything once again. So that would be the place where we read the content that is present on the in the Docker image, bundled in the Docker image at build time. And yeah, on second iteration, we don't even need to read that once. We'll just read that when the user actually requests or logs in. So yeah, this is all the update right now. And yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, so part of what Rudraksha is having to deal with here isn't necessarily easy. That bit about how to allow people to customize the software, and in this case, a filters configuration, while at the same time on upgrade, potentially offering enhancements to those same filters, to that same content. This is when you make the problem statement generic, it really applies to patterns and to applications and to any type of content that Meshri might have. There are some things that we can do initially to avoid the conflict and still to avoid the conflict. So one would be to disallow users from changing the configuration of an official piece of content, like something that came out of the box. And so what they'll have to do when they want to use one of those filters and apply a different config is that, well, if their config is externalized and not necessarily directly affiliated with the official filter, they might have config that's buried in a pattern file, so that they may be versioning that and storing it separately from the filter. Now, okay, when there's, yeah, and you know what, it's going to take a little while to walk through all the use cases here verbally. But we can quickly arrive at a couple of different ways in which to avoid it and still let people use the filter. So it can be inconvenient if we provide the user a collection of seed content, and then we say, well, no, like you can't touch that directly. Like, hey, you've got to make a copy, and it's not as Okay. If we, for filters specifically, if the binary and the configuration provided at runtime to that binary, if we just treat the filter as like the official, like the filter in some sample config is like the official thing, and that sample config we don't really care about. Like if people can orthogonally, like inside of a pattern file, track their own config separately, then it becomes this, the concern isn't really there. Now, I think I'm oversimplifying and being naive as I state this. I don't know that we can verbally, digest this on the call. Okay, fine. So that's one approach, is like, don't let the user make copies, or I'm sorry, don't let the user use it directly. But an alternative approach is to just go ahead and let them modify the bejesus out of the thing. And when they upgrade, is to provide a new seed content that is versioned for that next version. So, the worst, like, yeah, it's interesting because for a pattern, like the evolution of the pattern may build in experience over time that makes it a better pattern. And people would say, wait a second, like, I want to benefit from that. That would have been valuable had you just, brought your opinionated pattern, which is why I was using it in the first place, with that experience built in, and I like to just benefit from that. But now you've got them separated. And so now I've got, something to do with like trying to figure out, okay, for that, I think that's kind of specific to it. I mean, sometimes for the filters as well, if they're running more efficiently, people may, have the same complaint. Anyway, it's really difficult to get to make all of the use cases happy and satisfied without building a fair bit of versioned lifecycle management across. And like the concept of extension points as a concept really revolves around these same problem statements as well. It's like, it's the same thing as like you're trying to provide the content is an extension point in some respects. Like you have a platform, it has capabilities, people can bring new content, or you have a platform and it has an extensible area that if you want to bring in a couple new hyperlinks or like change the logo out in the corner, go ahead and provide your hyperlinks or provide your logo. And what you try to do is you try to carve out APIs, basically extension points that are basically APIs that say, whatever you want to do inside of here, we're not going to change, but we're going to be ignorant of it. Of course, there's some constraints here, so you can't do Bitcoin mining off of the, so stepping back, there's kind of two approaches. One, don't let them make changes to it. Two, just version it every release, and so give them the new versions. And if so they might have two complaints. The one complaint is, hey, I've upgraded like 3 times in a row, so I've got like 3 copies of this filter. You're like, that's what the delete button is for. You don't want it, but if you did want it, here's the changes, the differences. And you might also say, well, yeah, actually there's no differences between them, so just clear out your system, delete 2 of them, you're good. Like that's a minor nuisance. I think that's absolutely fine, certainly for now anyway. The second issue that people would say is the one that I had said before, which is like, well, what's new and hot about that new version? Oh, it runs more efficiently. Boy, I'd like to, gosh, why didn't you just give me that like that? Of course, why wouldn't I want that? You're like, well, you might like if you look at if you take the example of a pattern, it's like, well, best practice used to be 3 retries for every service, but now it's 2. And we don't want to just assume that you're always going to want it. Like and that's where you'd have to build in this like further, more granular lifecycle management around that. And it's like, look, we can't do all that right now. We're not going to do all that. So the answer there is just look, read the change log for this new version of the pattern. Turns out it's not 2 retries, or 3 retries, it's 2 now. And that's up to you. Like we don't want to, make any assumptions with your, and that's a completely responsible response. It's one that can be improved on, but it's not something that needs to be solved now. We can, so long as we're avoiding conflict in either of those two paths, we can come back to enhance with questions like, oh, we see that you, I mean, like one of the things you're trying to do right now, and if you can achieve it quickly and easily, great. That is, you're going to take the commit SHA of a given pattern. You're going to take the commit SHA of a given filter. And if they're running the same commit SHA, then like there is no difference. There's no need to duplicate the content. There's no need to worry also about overwriting their content because it is one and the same. And so it's a no op. So if you can, and that's nice because then that eliminates one of the complaints that people would have, like, oh, I've got like three entries of the same filter, just at different versions. And so like if you do that no op check, if you do that duplicity check, that should be relatively straightforward. We can reduce the number of, like this thing that we're talking about here is really like a future facing problem where like that we don't really have right now. We can, even if you're not doing that git SHA check, fine. Like we'll just address it later. I think when I had mentioned this before, I didn't dish out this comment with like a get out of jail free card, which is what we need to play here. And just we'll come back, we'll come back to, it's just a good note. It's just a good like entry in the docs that says, whatever path we went, here's where you need to, watch out for this on upgrade or
Gotcha. Okay, so that addresses one of the concerns about managing versions. The other is about like the current implementation is read the content and register it as regular patterns and filters. So that it can be delivered with the general API. We don't have to make changes everywhere and rewrite all that we already have for patterns and filters. So for that, we are just using the same tables that we had earlier, but that comes with the concern that admins get duplicate entries of everything. So either we can place a filter on them if the location for this is this repository, then don't just send it to admins. But
or git SHA because
maybe I'm not sure.
or like remove the word git SHA and just say unique identifier that tells you if the thing that you're looking at is the same thing as the other thing that you're looking at. And like even within the provider implement, like in this case, if that's a hash, which is what the SHA is, the git SHA is, like what you're able to do, there's a couple of things that's nice about that approach, as opposed to like, oh, if that comes from the sanctified official repository, then we'll do something. It's like, wait, in the database, how many times do you want to represent a unique object?
Once.
So before we even, and so that there needs to be indirection between the content, the object model that you haven't gotten to yet, which will help clarify this for you, I think, which is if your content, then you need indirection between the end user, which is this end user belongs to or has a role, which is part of they're part of a group. That group has assigned a role, which either the role allows access to this, and the group has access to this or not. And through that, you're able to say, great, this one piece of content is used 15,000 times, and this other piece of content is used once. but you can have that.
So, should we implement access on content separately? Like, shouldn't that be the same way as we do on patterns filters?
Yeah. Yep. But I guess my point is like never will you have or should you have this piece of content belongs to this one user. And so if another user wants that same piece of content, they need another copy. It's no, they don't. Why do they need a copy? Like they can just have a copy. They can have their own through access through. So it's like God, what is it in memory counters? What is it? Yeah, if you're using a language that doesn't have garbage collection on memory, or what requires a memory counter.
Oh,
There's got to be a computer. Yeah. There's got to be a computer science data structure for this. Whatever I'm trying to say. Reference counting. Reference counting.
So yeah.
Let me know when you get to the object model, and we'll shaw it out. I was going to say we'll hash it out, but
Cool.
All right. Any other comments here before we move on? Thank you, Rudraksha. So like, what should we do next? What is the next action item here? Like, should we review the updated spec and?
I think the object model, I'll just update the object model with this, hopefully by today, and ping everyone.
All right. Thank you, Rudraksh. So next up we have Sane. Sane, were you able to check on this centralization of configuration? So
Yeah, from our previous discussion, me and Abhi had a discussion about what needs to be changed in the PR. So one of which were code improvements. So there were some code improvements suggested by Abhi, and I have implemented that. One issue right now is there's a functionality issue. The application is not actually being loaded on the YAML editor. I haven't yet been able to figure out what the issue is. So I am looking on that, and I might need help as well.
nice. Yeah. Remind me, what's this one about? The configuration form. Oh, I see. To stop repeating ourselves across the three. Yeah. Maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe you should instead, Zane, like jump into the UI, the UI architecture, the new UI. And let us be okay with repeating ourselves for a release or two until we get to the new one, and then you can consolidate there.
all right. So I think Sane, you can follow up with Nitish's design spec on the updated UI, and there are enough areas for you to jump in and work on. All right. Next up, we have a demo from Gaurav on multiple import options, GitHub import options for patterns, filters, and applications. Gaurav?
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, this draft PR is about the GitHub import issue. So it is not particularly about the multiple import option which I demoed earlier. So this thing, I have before asking the queries, I will just show the basic import thing that we have for in the UI. But I have two questions that will help me to move forward with the issues. Is first one is that what all basic components or fields we require for the GitHub import, other than this getting the URL and directly importing it from the remote repository. And second one is that based on this info for in the meshes and service mesh patterns about when the user is logged in with provider or none, we have the following paths and URLs to follow and using the method post and all. So I have set the conditions and made following changes for the filters only, but I'm not sure would that be a valid approach to follow.
Utkarsh, do you have any guide?
Yeah, actually, I couldn't exactly understand the issue here. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, my first query is about what all fields, I mean the components like we have import and all required in this model for the GitHub import. Plus, how can I add the fields, this thing, this URL, or do we need certain endpoints, or I can directly use the URL validator that we are using for the Meshri URL. Is that does that make sense, or should I brief more?
yeah, actually, so the required fields would be, if you would go to the spec again. Is my screen stuck? Okay. If you would go to the Google Docs that you were sharing. Yeah. So here you can see there is this URL path and save. Save is obviously something that is required. So, and that would be implicit to the UI. Like if someone is importing, they probably do want to save it. The second thing is the path that is also required. And what this path is basically if they don't want to import everything from entire repository, they can just specify a path that, okay, go inside dir1/dir2 and then probably get everything, or only just traverse this. But so this in short, this path is a required field. What would be the best UX to show them? That's not something I'm sure about, but this would be a required field, or this could be implicit. That is, we don't expose this. Probably we should, but we don't expose this, and we say, okay, we are going to just recursively traverse the entire repository. So in short, yes, path is a required field. And in the URL looks a bit different. You can see, https://github.com/owner/repository. That is the common, like that is how GitHub URLs are. The /branch, that is in the end, that is something you can have a field for. That is, what branch do you want us to traverse? The default is main for now. But if so, yeah, so this is something that you can probably have a field for, that you can say that, okay, main is the branch name that we are going to consider. If you want to override that, specify that, and you can append that in the end. Whatever branch name you would give, that would be respected, unless until you don't give any. In that case, we will traverse main. So yeah, I think three fields are required: URL, the field for branch, and the field for path. That's pretty much it.
Okay, so I can do in the same function itself by having this.
Yeah, everything is consolidated into the same endpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, just change the request body, and endpoint would behave slightly different.
Yeah, okay. So this endpoint will be changed according to the GitHub URL.
Endpoint would remain same. The post body would.
Yeah, okay. I got it. The post body. And for the UX thing. And one more thing, that will the URL validator that we are using for the importing URL, will that be sufficient for that, or I need to make some more changes?
I think so. Actually, I don't think we should expose that this is the way we internally consume URL. You can probably just have https://github.com// and internally, when you actually send the body, you can augment it to how the API internally expects it. So yeah, that's probably my suggestion. In that case, we can reuse the previous URL validators. I think so. Yeah.
Okay. That was all. It was basically for the GitHub import. I'll after this thing will be wrap up, I'll make a separate issue or a PR for having the multiple import option that I showed earlier.
Oh, also just one thing I noticed in the model, it was saying that private repositories are not supported when you choose Mystery as provider. In fact, it's quite opposite. Private repositories are supported when you choose Mystery as provider. It's not supported when you choose none as your provider.
Okay, yeah, I got it. No, nice provider. Yeah, that was all from update.
Thank you, Gaurav. Nice update. So let's move on to the next topic. So I guess Meghna is not on the call, and in the last meeting, uh, we were looking to find some area for Meghna to get involved uh, in this. So I don't know if we have any updates on that. So uh, Lee, like, do you have any updates?
No, there's a no. Gaurav opened up like a good first issue for calculating the number of filters or any piece of content that's shown in a table. Gaurav, that's fantastic. If no one signs up in a day and a half from now, then please just take that issue and implement. But it's
Okay,
a good
sure.
one for like Pranav, who's on the call, potentially KK, who's on the call. That either the two of them might want to pick that up and give it a shot. And if they do, they're looking for a starter issue in this area, they should go see you and see the one that you just opened. For Meghna, I don't think we've expressed, like, given her necessarily clear guidance. I think maybe it's time for her to shift her focus to the new UI. So this is a healthy reminder to Navendu as you outline the Meshery development meetings agenda to include, just like you're including a standing section for Meshery CTL, the new UI will be an ongoing theme for a while. So it'll be, there's a tracking spreadsheet that Nitish should be, he should have a section where he's covering that. Aditya, if we can get, is Aditya on? No, okay. But this could be, that effort, since it's front-end based, could be something to cover in the websites meeting for new Meshery UI. On the next question, I just had this general question, and it was, Utkarsh, we have this ability to deploy these WASM filters to Envoy-based data planes. And do we still have, like, refresh my memory, what are we at, where are we at in terms of implementation compatible with all, are we like?
Right now, the support is very, very minimal. Right now, we are only supporting Istio. We don't have a high-level construct, we don't have high-level construct which can operate on all of the service meshes. That's one of the things. The second thing is that because we don't have a high-level construct, so even the pattern which is capable of deploying filter, that is also very like it's using all of the constructs of Istio in order to. So basically, if you would read the pattern, you would be able to see that we are actually directly leveraging Istio's construct, and there is no a higher level construct for configuring any of that. So yeah, that's the state at the moment, and that is why we are actually right now only supporting Istio service mesh, and not every service mesh support which has Envoy.
Roger that. All right. Assuming no comment, We did so last week. We were here and we said, hey, we just had a cloud native day WebAssembly at KubeCon. So that was about 3 weeks ago now, or ish, somewhere in there. And we said, if anyone finds interesting topics, let's go ahead and reach out and touch someone. Did you guys get those same AT&T commercials? Like nonstop, reach out and touch someone? Like, yeah, I think before cellular was the thing. Anyway, so we're touching 2 Intel engineers whose names I'm gonna have a hard time pronouncing, but we just got connected with them. And so we're gonna try to get them scheduled, hopefully for next week. Hopefully this time works for them. The project that they were working on is a WebAssembly system interface for neural networks, which is which in concept is highly related to one of the abilities that we desire for mesh tree to have, and that is to characterize the performance of your service mesh from within each and every filter, from within each and every sidecar, to do some specific calculations, not only about characterizing the performance, but also then based on that performance, to potentially do some higher level orchestration, maybe reroutes from traffic based on some things, to potentially glean some efficiencies. I don't know, it's a little bit of a long shot. I think where it becomes potentially really interesting is when you take into account use cases like locality-based routing. So if you're trying to facilitate failover for certain services that might be failover capable while others might not be, or when you go to incorporate services that span not only Kubernetes, but edge, the latency involved there and the routing that goes on with something like that, brings in room for these types of performance characterizations to like actually take action on them and have the action be meaningful. So good. So we got in contact with 2 new Intel engineers. So we'll see. We seem to have a lot of Intel folks coming to the calls, which is fantastic. Did anyone else see that in last week's meeting minutes, there's a link, Cloud Native Day WebAssembly? Did anyone notice any other topics that we wanted to invite people to come and educate us on? So serverless WebAssembly for compute intensive workloads at 4. Yeah, that one. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize if you go back one, I guess in Navendu, I didn't realize that those 2 Intel engineers, they did speak at the conference just right there at 3:35. Okay, cool. So they'll have fresh content and that's great. I have spoken with Liam Randall, the next presenter in the maroon color, before he founded Wasm Cloud. And so he might be interested to come and share a little bit about Wasm Cloud. But if you go back for a moment and humor me with the serverless WebAssembly for compute intensive workloads. So as a concrete example, Robert will showcase a serverless function that performs bioinformatics analysis. This is done by compiling an existing library from C to WebAssembly and deploying it as a serverless function. So I wonder what FAS compute environment he was deploying to. But yeah, cool. It's really interesting to see WebAssembly programs, being a write once, run many, a WARA, run anywhere, I guess, a WARA, write once, run anywhere, but to have people using examples like in serverless environments, that's really, that's heartening. Okay, well, if anybody sees other topics, just, call them out. So other than the Vendu, has anybody studied a little bit of neural networking? And I think that's about as far as Navendu's experience goes, with some studies and a little bit of toying with TensorFlow. But I would, until he proves otherwise, I would leave it in the toying category. He's gonna make me eat my words. Awesome.
Have you already scheduled the session with the Intel engineers? Okay.
I'm hoping next week. Like this is a tentative.
Yep, like I already have some questions to ask them. So.
All right, anything else today? Oh, hey, I've got something I forgot. I just saw Azure on that page. This is something that I'll announce in the community meeting, but Azure is kind enough to give us $10,000 in credits on their platform. So I've got at least like half a Bitcoin that I'm looking to. So which is good because there's some AKS, there's a bunch of compatibility testing that needs to be done, AKS in specific. And so we'll talk more about that, I guess, on Friday, but good news. Oh, and for open service mesh, right? For SMI, for SMI conformance testing on open service mesh, which there's no doubt, or there's very little doubt that Microsoft will eventually offer an open service mesh offering, right? Whether that's its own standalone service on Azure or a checkbox on your AKS config or something like that. I'll take that bet. They're going to do it. All right.
Does anyone else have anything else to discuss before we close this meeting?
Yeah, I have a small doubt. Like if I share my screen, so actually, I think Utkarsh just told that these two were missing due to because Istio was not installed in my system. But in the morning, what I did was that I took these same two commands. Like I have already running Docker desktop, and over here I think I'm being using Minikube. So I have just copy pasted code and it's just installed me Meshidi. And then I used this command, like this exact same command, message detail pattern apply and this command. And you can see yeah, this one, this image, this I have uploaded from there only, but it didn't have any error over there. So like what's the difference that this from HRCTL, it's not creating any error, but that workflow it's creating an error. So what might be the difference between these two?
It could be that you either have Istio installed or you had Istio installed, and because right now we don't clear out the custom resource definitions, CRDs, because we are using Helm-based installations. So your Kube API server probably, basically your Kubernetes still has those CRDs. So if you can just do kubectl get custom resource definitions, and if you see those custom resources in your environment, probably that is the reason you didn't see the error in your local environment.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I got it.
Lee, about the questions, I'll just do some quick research to make sure that they are not that trivial, but it surrounds things related to, I bet we will be exploring TensorFlow. So that is the best thing to use in production. So comparing the performance running natively on TensorFlow and Wasm, and like maybe if they have some experience with that, I will share those on Slack. All right. So I guess that's it for today's meeting, and we'll follow up on some of the stuff that we discussed next week, and maybe some of these will be discussed on the Meshery development call later this week. So I'll see you guys there. Thank you for joining, and bye.
Bye all. See you guys.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.